is Tuesday, September 19th. Madam Chair, please call this meeting to order. Oh, before we do that, I'd like to appoint Councilman Casey and Councilman Slife so we can have quorum to move on. Thank you. Here.
Okay, present.
Art, House, Jones, McCormick, Spencer,
Present.
Sly,
Present.
Casey.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll start off with ordinance number 690, 2023, as amended by Council Members Casey, Harrison, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Economic Development to enter into a tax increment financing agreement with Hawthorne Elementary Partners, LLC, and/or its designee to assist with the financing of the Hawthorne Elementary School project to be located at 3575 West 130th Street, to provide for payments to the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, and to declare certain improvements to real property to be a public purpose. Again, this is the second piece of the TIF. First, we always enter chain of title, and then we move into the actual piece itself, and that is what we are doing today. Good morning, Interim Director Terry Hamilton Brown.
Good morning, Chairman.
Good to have you here. All right,
Ready?
the floor is yours.
Not only is this the second piece for the TIF,
Yes.
this is the last
That's right.
ordinance that's needed
That's
to
right.
move this project forward. So good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am joined by Josh Rosen, partner with Sustainable Communities Associates, Conrad Metz from Economic Development, and Michael Curry from OEO. And we have a very brief presentation and for you for Hawthorne School. It's a conversion of a former CMSD school to apartments, 37 apartments, $14.9 million project, and the legislation before you is a non-school TIF. And with that, I would ask Josh to provide the presentation. I think this will do it. And if we move forward with that.
Could you turn on the side?
Oh, on the side. Is that going to work?
This, yep, on, and now let's try it. There you go.
All right. Well, hi, my name is Josh Rosen from Sustainable Community Associates, and it's really wonderful to be here. This process started with CMSD putting a number of schools that were no longer in use available to developers as part of an RFP process. And we became really interested in the Hawthorne School for a few reasons, one of which is that we've done a number of historic tax credit preservation projects across Cleveland. You might be familiar with the Fairmont Creamery or Wagner Awning or Mueller Lofts. So this fit really nicely into what we do. We also were really excited to work in Councilman Casey's ward. It's a new neighborhood for us. We think it's a wonderful community full of a ton of assets, and we're just excited to be able to work with the community there. Sort of mentioned that the school was decommissioned in 2013 in the West Park neighborhood, 37 units plus a ton of green space. Total costs are $14.9 million. You know, we listed all of the some of the different financing mechanisms, but there's actually a lot more that's on here. For a middle neighborhood project, this was one of the most complicated that we've ever done. Cleveland Development Advisors is doing a first mortgage construction loan on the project. That's not what they typically do. This had state historic tax credits. It had brownfield money from the state and the county. Their sewer district also gave a grant for bioretention, plus your traditional developer equity sources. So it's fairly complicated for the size of project, but we love projects like this and are excited about it. We are expecting to start approximately the third week of October. We're in the process of closing all of our loans right now, and construction is going to take about 12 to 13 months. And this is a rendering of what it will look like when it's all finished.
And this slide provides an overview or analysis of the TIF and the Economic Development ROA. Mr. Chairman, this is the slide you asked that we now provide whenever we offer a TIF, and we're happy to do that. It provides an overview of the project. It will create 5 full-time jobs with a $250,000 annual payroll. In addition, there's a 15-year residential CRA tax abatement and the 30-year non-school TIF. An estimated proceeds from the TIF is $307,372. What else do I want to tell you? That the net income over 30 years is over $600,000, net income tax revenue, and that's estimated at $21,375 annually. And with that, that's an overview. This is not the first time you've seen the project. We also have Michael Curry here with us because this project will be subject to a community benefits agreement. Actually, I think it's worth noting that Josh Rosen and the development group began working with Councilman Casey and the community on community benefits before the ordinance was in place.
Great.
And so we've taken what they began to negotiate and are meeting with OEO to put that in the new template, which they have been more than willing to do. And so there's just really been good communication and commitment on both sides.
Yes, great to hear. Yes, I know Councilman Casey has been working hard on this project. We put this on because we knew it was a priority of his, the neighborhood, and also you all as well to move this along. As you presented before, a great project. Looked like you had everything put together. This slide is very important. You know, as we continue to do these TIFs, this is a slide that I'm looking for every TIF that comes before council, so we can see exactly the big picture over time. You know,
Next time I'll make sure the print's a little bigger.
just a little bit bigger, but it's okay. We're good at that. So thank you for providing that information. I will go to Councilman Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is an overly exciting project. I was just speaking with Councilman Slife, and we cannot think of the last market rate project this big on the far west side of Cleveland. And market rate, we've done some senior housing and some low income, but market rate, we can't, and I think we would have to compare it probably to West Tech, which was done in the 80s, right? But so this is overly exciting for the neighborhood. This has been an abandoned CMSD building that has been sitting vacant for roughly the last 12 to 15 years. The neighborhood is, we've had community meetings on it. The neighborhood is excited to see this going on. We couldn't be happier with Sustainable Community Associates and Josh and Naomi who've come in and believe in the neighborhood. We believe in the neighborhood, and this is going to be one of the anchor projects moving forward, and hopefully it's the first of many to come. So I want to encourage my colleagues to support the TIF, even though I'm not the big TIF guy on council. But this is the exact reason for a TIF, right? I mean, we've got a smaller developer coming into a neighborhood that doesn't see development at all, or at least very, very rarely. So I'd appreciate the support of the colleagues, and again, we're looking so forward to working with Josh and Naomi and seeing this project come to light. And one of the exciting things about it, Josh, and if you want to talk about it, is they're leaving the gym, kind of, sort of, with the basketball courts and a stage area type thing, and keeping that an apartment. So I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, I recall the last
That
presentation
apartment
that they
itself,
talked about that.
yeah.
That was a neat aspect.
We're
Yeah.
we're going to bring back the Hawthorne Huskies mascot.
Exactly,
you know,
yeah.
so.
So I'd appreciate the support, and congratulations to Josh and Naomi, and thank to the Economic Development Department on the project. Thank you.
Are there any further questions from the committee?
Quick question.
Yes.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Congratulations, Councilman Casey. I do rarely hear any projects in your ward, so very excited about this. Just, I wasn't here in the initial presentation through the chair. I'm curious to know, what's the rents going for?
Yeah, so in developer speak, about $1.40 a square foot. So call it like $900 to $1,100 for a one bed and about $1,400 for a two bed.
Got it.
So and there's some larger ones like the basketball court, which will go for more, but they're
Yeah.
3,000 square foot apartments.
And how many apartments?
37.
37 apartment. And just last but not least, just as I'm learning this space, I'm curious to know, out of the 14 million, how much is out of pocket from developer?
Yeah,
Equity.
approximately $400,000.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Are you all done? Okay. I was just queuing myself up for some questions. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Mr. Chair. This is, love hearing about this project, and it makes me jealous that we don't have legacy CMSD school buildings in my neighborhoods. All of mine were torn down and replaced with what's called brutalist-style architecture in the 70s, which kind of look like prisons. So I didn't really have a lot of these beautiful masonry structures. So it's really an amazing asset and certainly worthy of investment. I'm just wanting to learn, use this as a learning opportunity, because I feel like council members are always learning about how all this works, how development works. I'm just curious, that last bullet point in the second column, and it does kind of feel like when your driver's license and getting your eyes checked, can you read the line? No problem.
Yeah,
That was awesome. The last bullet point, estimated non-school TIF net proceeds are $307,000. Can through the chair, can you explain that number again and how we arrive at that number?
Well, Chairman to
Sure,
Councilwoman
yes.
Spencer, there's actually a calculation that the Economic Development Department has, a spreadsheet. So you put in the capital cost, the construction costs, and the estimated tax, the difference, right? And it calculates it, but Conrad, can you help?
The number you're looking at.
Yeah.
Is the net.
And that's over the time of the 30-year TIF.
That would be present value.
In the microphone,
Oh, I'm sorry.
the net present value.
Normally, I don't need a microphone, but I forget
You're on
it's
TV
great
20.
Shame I am.
Yes.
This is the net present value over the 30 years, so it's discounted back to present dollars, as opposed to, of course, the numbers that you'd have X number of years from now.
And then a follow-on question to that
Yes.
through our chair is, how are these, does this come to the project as upfront cash to the project, or how does the project take advantage of these dollars?
Payments in lieu of taxes, and on an annual basis, they will
disbursement.
get the increment. Instead of paying taxes, you pay this pilot to the county, and then, I don't know in this case if they're going through Huntington or if there's an escrow agent.
I don't know who's our escrow. I don't have that written down. Yeah, it will go through an escrow agent.
Say, it
Oh,
will
I-
go through an escrow
sorry.
and paid to the development.
Oh, sure.
It is super, right? So our lender sees that tax increment financing package, and that we're not going to have to pay as much out of the project, and they're able to lend more money into the project. So in some ways, it's the equivalent of a grant to a project that we couldn't otherwise get. So
Thank you.
it's worth noting that the banks see a real value in this and will lend you more money.
So it's the actual cash flow comes in through the lender, but it's thanks to.
Not through the
It's
lender.
not through the
Usually
lender,
it's
but-
through an
Well, let's make sure that
escrow
we run
agent.
all questions and answers
Sorry.
through the chair.
Thank
All right?
you,
Thank you.
Chairman.
Yeah.
So, Chairman to Councilwoman Spencer, as Mr. Rosen just said, the lender is aware of it, lending more money.
Right.
And then the pilot payments, instead of paying the taxes, it comes back to help pay the debt service on the additional money that is borrowed.
Okay.
But it's more cash flow. It helps the cash flow for the development project.
Right, okay. And then I wanted to also, I agree, neighborhoods need a mix of housing, affordable and market rate. I'm just curious through the chair to know, in this case, why the developer didn't pursue LIHTC or affordable. It's hard to make these projects work, so I'm just curious how you were able to pull this together without that source of subsidy.
Well, it took quite a lot of heavy lifting to pull it together without LIHTC. I think one of the reasons was in talking to Councilman Casey was sort of the sense that the community would most benefit from a market rate project. But it's worth noting that the market rate here is not the market rate of perhaps a ward with a higher median income. It's actually more like designed for that neighborhood. It's not just $2,500 a month. I think the other reason, frankly, is we don't have a lot of low-income housing tax credit development experience. It's just not what we do, and that's its own sort of field. So we sort of look at other mechanisms to try to fund a project.
Yeah. And that I think wraps me up, Mr. Chair, but I'm glad to see a market rate project that is achieving rents affordable to 80 to 100% of AMI. That's badly needed. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Just remember to the guests, whenever you have a question or you're answering, please run all questions and answers through the chair, all right?
Thank you.
All right,
for
Councilman
that
McCormick?
reminder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got an amendment to read. Just a couple
Yes, sir.
comments though before I do. This seems like a great project. Congratulations to Councilman Casey and the development team. And I'll note too that not only do TIFs invest in the new value, not existing revenue, but this duly so was a school producing zero tax revenue.
Yes.
So really, any added revenue from this site is an increase to our property tax as well as the city. So a really great example of why TIFs are important and how they can take vacant buildings in our neighborhoods and get them over the finish line to provide active, positive uses for our neighborhoods. So really excited to see this project, and I think it's a really, as Councilman Casey noted, a solid example of how we can leverage these unique economic development tools to breathe life into our neighborhoods. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I've got an amendment. So I would move that we amend ordinance number 690-2023 as follows. In the second whereas clause, strikes line 3, 4, and 5 in their entirety and insert street for purposes of future development, deed dated August 29th, 2023, AFN number 20230820248, authorize the property to be conveyed to Hawthorne Elementary Partners, LLC, or its designee, deed dated August 29th, 2023, AFN number 20230829024, and our Assistant Law Director. You have the amendment, sir. Right here. Lovely.
All right, is there a
That's my
second?
motion, Mr. Chair.
I second.
Thank you. Motion and second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, amendment passes. All right, any closing comments by members of the committee? All right, anything from the administration?
No, thank you, Chairman.
All right, thank you. Ordinance number
Thank you.
690-2023 as amended stands approved. Thank you all. All right, next up, ordinance number 787.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Getting the presentation brought up. And I believe members of the committee received in their email and updated.
Good morning.
It's in the tablets? Okay, you have it in your tablets. All right, the presentation is there. Also, Mr. Titran emailed over some additional documents last night that were provided to the council for your review. All right, ordinance number 787-2023 by council members McCormick, Harrison, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Economic Development to enter into a development agreement with Cleveland LD LLC or its designee, successors, and assignees to plan and execute a development and finance strategy to maximize public and private use along Cleveland's riverfront, including Tower City, property between Huron Road and the riverfront, and property between Ontario Street and the riverfront. You know how the singers and they have to do these exercises. They should start reading our ordinance. I mean, they really should. It will help. All right. Good morning, Chief. Good morning, Chief, and to our guests here. And you want to kick it off?
Yeah, good morning, Chairman. Jeff Epstein, Chief Integrated Development, joined by Ahmed Amadama, our Chief Financial Officer, Nadia Sise, and Deb Janik from Bedrock. We're going to kind of, Ahmed and I, we're going to kind of frame up a little bit bigger picture before we zoom into the agreement and talk through kind of that bigger picture, and then one of the key concepts in the agreement. Then Deb and Nadia are going to go into some of the specifics on the project. I know some of you are more familiar than others with the details on the project. They're going to kind of do a high-level overview of what the project is, and I know they are willing to come back, and we spoke with the chairman about coming back either to DPS or to Committee of the Whole for a deeper dive on the project plan and details, which has been through Planning Commission, has been on the public, but happy to do that. And then Bedrock and us will finish out by outlining the agreement. So, I think at a high level, we're going to talk a lot here about public infrastructure and the need to leverage private investment. And I wanted to start by kind of putting a little bit in context of where overall investment is in Cleveland and where we lag. This is some data that we've seen from the Urban Institute. They actually came in and presented to Cabinet a couple months ago that show scaled investment based on per household in 100 largest cities in the United States over 2010 to 2020. This is total investment. You can see us highlighted on the bottom here. And as we think about investment and what is needed to drive investment, we believe that the type of infrastructure investments that we're contemplating in this project and others are what we need. And as we look at the overall kind of framing of this, the vast majority of it, some of it is accounted by the fact that, if you think about San Francisco versus Cleveland, we've got lower property values here, so there's less dollar lending. But the vast majority of this is non-residential, and we are actually pretty strong if you look at the details behind this in mission investment and federal investment. But it's that private investment that we're really lagging. Anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, and I would just a little more context on that piece. If you were to lump together the non-residential, single-family, multifamily, and small business, that is the majority of investment that any city sees, and we are at the bottom end of that scale on each of those measures compared to our peers in the top 100 cities, with the biggest gap in the non-residential. I believe in the non-residential, we're third to last among the top 100 cities in the country.
So this kind of sets the framework for this broader vision that we've been talking a lot about, the kind of shore to core to shore. And we are in the midst right now of some generational infrastructure investments that open up our waterfronts. If you look at Irishtown Bend and Scranton Peninsula, we've seen where public infrastructure investments are catalyzing huge amounts of private investment. And we want to continue to drive that forward. We're seeing it now with Bedrock's interest based on the partnership that we built with Bedrock on the Cuyahoga Riverfront. And we are seeing it now with the planning that we're doing on the waterfront. And this broader framework, I think, is an important framework to think about as we talk about some of the tools that we're going to talk about here today. And really, this is the kind of investment that, in terms of the public infrastructure, and again, a lot of today's conversations about public infrastructure that drives our tax base, that drives our population, that creates opportunities for our residents to access the water, and continues to drive our downtown as the regional base for our economy. We've also got a tremendous amount of upside here, acres of inaccessible riverfront land. This agreement and the work that Bedrock will do will not only bring a ton of vertical development and economic development activity, but the public infrastructure investments are going to create access, stabilize our riverfront. And we've got a great partner in Bedrock, and they'll talk about their track record in other areas, but our alignment around community benefits, about ensuring that these projects benefit the community more broadly, is spot on, and this is a long-term partnership and relationship that we're excited to continue to build here today. I'll also note, before we get into some specifics, we've been working this agreement all summer. Ahmed and I, robust discussion, negotiation, but this is the first of many agreements that will be coming before this body. This is really a framework. It articulates the broad principles of how we're going to work forward, going together, some of the broad financing principles. Anything you want to add and wind up? All right. So I want to get in a little bit into one of the concepts that is in the development agreement and talk through it, because it's new in terms of the city of Cleveland. And we're calling it the Shore to Core TIF district. This is a new kind of TIF for the city. It's an overlay district, but it's not, as you see, and we'll talk about in a little bit, new in Ohio. A TIF district works similar to the TIF that we just heard with Hawthorne, and just that TIF refresher. The public jurisdiction puts the TIF in place, property value increases, and we're only talking about that increase in property value, and a portion of that increase can be used. In this case of the overlay district, the portion of that increase can only be used for public improvements. So this is different than the Hawthorne TIF, where we're doing a project TIF, a 41 TIF, where we do the chain of title, and the increase in taxes can be used for anything. This can only be used for public infrastructure. Examples of kind of public infrastructure and public improvement, if we talk through it, this is a shortened list of what's in the statute, but it gives you a sense of it. We're talking about public parks, we're talking about utilities, we're talking about roads, we're talking about parking facilities, so very broadly kind of public infrastructure. And our plan is to create a Shore to Core TIF district that would reside over much of downtown and the near west side. It would encompass a broad area. We're still defining the geography, and it would capture the natural increase in land value. So we're talking about land value only in that area, and create a large upfront fund. If we think about that calculation of all of that increase over 30 years, that we can use upfront to advance these objectives. One, capturing and leveraging the growth that we see downtown to benefit all Clevelanders. And we'll talk in a minute about a portion of the funds generated by this district that we want to use outside of downtown to leverage neighborhoods. Really provide the public piece for these catalytic waterfront investments that we're planning on. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure needs for the waterfront and the riverfront. And this is the public piece as we go to leverage state and federal dollars that we will use for that. And then, as I talk about these neighborhood ideas, and we'll talk in a minute more about this, the idea of focusing the neighborhood piece of this on our Parks and Rec master plan. Our team is undergoing this master plan right now. A lot of community engagement activity. We'll have a concrete plan, and we think the dollars that are generated by this can be some funding to kind of kickstart implementation there.
All right, just before you
Yes, sir.
Before you move on, can you go back a slide?
Yep.
To the committee, are there any questions about the TIF overlay district? Is there any thoughts, any questions? Yes, Councilwoman Spencer.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I wanted to clarify through the chair the statement that the geography is still being finalized, and when does that occur, and how does that relate to this piece of legislation?
So to the councilwoman through the chair, the TIF overlay district is a concept that is introduced in this agreement, and the agreement contemplates that within 2 months we will come back to council to enact the TIF overlay district. And the agreement also states that a portion to be determined by the administration of the proceeds generated will pay for public infrastructure in the Bedrock project. And so that's what I'm walking through the overview of this before we get into the Bedrock project. And we'll talk more specifically, but I wanted to introduce the concept because it's a major new concept here.
Any other questions around the TIF overlay district?
And Chairman, I do have some more slides on the overlay district.
All right,
here,
I just wanted to make sure that if there's anything.
The question is, when we're looking at this,
So this would be the first time we would ever have done a TIF overlay district in the city of Cleveland, is that correct?
Through the councilman to the chair, yes, but and I've got my slide here. These have been done across the state. If you look behind you, I've got a slide. Columbus has TIF'd their entire downtown. East Fourth is a district, but it
Not an
captures the
overlay.
vertical too, so it's different. Easton and Columbus, Rockside Road, Independence, a number of other examples of this. They're up on the screen here that show how these work.
I would like to kind of understand, how that would operate. So it's a series of questions, but due to the fact that you're in the presentation, I'd like you to move on, Mr. Chairman. And then hopefully if you could get that information, so what that looks like right now, what will it look like moving forward in the future? And then the next question would be where those boundaries of that overlay would be.
Yeah, and I would say through the chairman to the councilman, as Jeff alluded, there will be a separate legislative process with respect to the TIF overlay district where we will have the specific boundaries and all the mechanics of how the district approach will work. That is to come in the next couple of months.
I see.
Yes.
Through the chair, so is the geography, one of these slides says citywide. Is the TIF revenue expected to be able to be used citywide? And if so, how does that work as a fund? Do we put the TIF revenue into a separate fund and then it has oversight by who?
Yeah, we're going to get there.
Oh, okay.
You're
Coming
a
up
little bit
later?
ahead of us, but no, I appreciate it.
Okay, sneak peek.
Great question, though.
Sneak
Great
peek.
question.
All right, we'll come back.
Absolutely. Yes.
And through the chair to the councilman, on that specific point, when we bring the TIF overlay district, we will also bring with it legislation to make it a remote TIF, which allows us to use the proceeds anywhere in the city. And we will, at that point, kind of have recommendations from framework on what gets used where. But I think it is important to note, and let me go back a slide here, and I'll talk about some of the differences, that it's important to note that we're essentially in this borrowing against the future growth of property value downtown within the area of the TIF district. And so it is critical that in order to achieve that growth, the majority of it needs to be invested in the area of the TIF district.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So are we planning to bond
Okay.
and then use TIF revenue to pay bonds for the infrastructure work? Yes.
Through the councilman to the chair, yes, but the city will not issue the bonds. It will be issued through the port or some other.
Okay.
avenue.
So then we need to do some math to make sure the projected revenue keeps up with bond debt.
Through the chair to the councilman, that's the work we'll be doing over the next few months to analyze, and before we come back to you with the specifics, I'm just presenting the concept today.
Yes, thank you. And so again, as today is just kind of the as it says, the master development agreement, right? And all of the subsequent approvals and all of the other subsequent approvals will come through the committee as well, such as the overlay district, what did I call it yesterday? Neighborhood development.
Neighborhood Development Fund.
The Neighborhood Development Fund. That hasn't been defined yet today. Just my name for it.
Stop asking questions.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. And all of those things will come along down the road, including the percentage of what will continue to go into this actual area, what percentage will go into the neighborhoods, what that looks like, who will have say-so. We will make sure that all of those items are rolled out. All right? Thank you.
So just a couple pieces more on how this is different. Traditionally, we've done these project TIFs on an individual project, and they just fund that project. So 3 differences here. One is the remote TIF that I referenced before. We will be able to use these proceeds outside of the area of the district. Second is that typically our TIFs fund one project. This will be able to fund multiple different priorities, and it's a larger area rather than a single project. I mentioned some of these examples before. I think it's noteworthy in Columbus, and we spoke with Columbus on their downtown TIF. It has paid for several parking garages downtown. They've already paid them off and are generating more proceeds for more activity downtown. So this is relatively commonly done across the state, and about half of Columbus's TIFs, I think they have numbering in the 90s, are districts or overlay districts. So from a proceeds standpoint, really, I think these 3 goals. One is the public infrastructure to do these catalytic waterfront projects, of which Bedrock is one. Second is the idea of using the pieces that come outside of the district to help fund the neighborhood master plan, and third, to fund other infrastructure in our core. We presented a couple months ago, along with DCA, Reimagining Downtown Plan. Downtown Cleveland right now is finalizing a retail plan. There are some pieces around lighting, public space that are needed to make sure that our downtown stays competitive and strong, and we would anticipate looking at those as well. The schools, we've briefed the superintendent and senior leadership on this concept. The idea initially is to go with this as a non-school TIF. We've been upfront with the superintendent and the schools that if they would like to bond some piece of this up front and put in a piece of the school TIF to get a large upfront payment that creates a win-win for the school district, that we're open to exploring that, but our commitment is to make sure the schools stay whole and that we create a win-win here with the schools. And then the last piece before I turn it over to the Bedrock team, the questions of kind of where it is, how much does it generate, we are still studying, and that will come back to council. So we'll circle back to this later, but I'm going to let the Bedrock team now talk about the project, and then we'll come back to the development agreement. But this is one of the key concepts, as I said, that's in it. So, Nadia.
There we go. Good morning. There you go. That one. Okay. Good morning, Chairman Hairston and Vice Chair Santana, and members of the committee, and I see President of the City Council has left us. Thank you for having me here today. I am Nadia Sisse with Bedrock, and I wanted to just give a little overview about Bedrock before I dive into the presentation. Bedrock is a full-service real estate firm. Bedrock and affiliates have invested and committed more than $5.6 billion acquiring and developing over 100 properties within Cleveland and Detroit. And more importantly, we've also developed some landmark projects that include the May Company as well as the most recently completed Book Tower. We have about 19 million square foot of office, retail, and residential space that consist of adaptive reuse and new construction. The master plan before you is one of the largest transit-oriented development in the state of Ohio. The master plan emphasizes places great emphasis on inclusion, livability, as well as accessibility and sustainability. More specifically, it advances three fundamental objectives. One is to develop the downtown riverfront as, what was that? Oh, I thought you were going to help me.
You got to give me the remote.
Nadia Sisse? Nadia. Yes. Yes. So we have three fundamental development goals. One is to develop the downtown and riverfront as walkable, accessible neighborhood that positions Cleveland towards becoming an 18-hour city. The second is to leverage sustainable infrastructure and technology in public spaces as a driver for investment, and more importantly, to ensure equitable delivery of economic growth and opportunities that is accessible to everyone in the neighborhoods and the region. I do want to share that Bedrock and its affiliate are proud to state that we have positive relationships with union and labor, and we've established that through a number of community benefits agreement in some of the developments we've done in Cleveland. Those include the May Company, where we had a community benefit agreement as well as a workforce development agreement, and where we met and exceeded the goals. Similarly, with the improvement of the Cleveland facility, we also entered into a community benefit agreement where we met and exceeded the goals. More specifically in Cleveland, in Detroit, we have a variety of community benefit agreements as it relates to major development projects. That just tells you there were company that truly believes in community benefit, and more importantly, connecting the work we do with the community and advancing them as we work within those communities. We intend to enter into a community benefit agreement. We are going to be as creative as possible to kind of advance the goals in partnership with the city and the administration. We will work with the administration to advance some community workshops, investments, mentorships, and so on to build the capital and training to advance the development. As you know, it's a 20-plus year development project, so we're going to need to work together to make sure we have the appropriate capacity to advance the project in a reasonable timeline. We definitely believe it's an equal opportunity for workforce as well as small business, so we'll continue to advance inclusion of MBEs, FBEs, and CSBs as we continue to do procurement. Since we've embarked on this project in 2021, we'll be very intentional in how we procure services as well as contract, professional services contract, to make sure we are starting to not only build the muscles, but also fulfill this goal. We have a team within my shop that's solely set up to administer community benefits, create them, and report on them. So we'll prioritize this project as we always do. We will also explore bundling and unbundling of contracts where appropriate. We definitely would do community outreach, and Deb will touch on some of the extensive outreach we've done to date. The expectation will continue to do that, particularly as it relates to the community benefit as when that comes before you. And more importantly, would like to participate in all the contraction and assistance programs that exist, and work with the city and the administration to advance some of the neighborhood fund that was talked about earlier. With that, I'll turn it over to Deb to give more specifics about observations and specifics about the development. Thank you.
Thank you. These are tough little guys. Yeah. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, City Council. Thrilled to be back in front of this table. It's been a while, decade plus, but it's good to be here, and thank you for having us this morning. I want to echo the sentiment of my colleague as we sit here, Bedrock, today in front of you, continuing our work with the chiefs and the administration as we look to move the master plan of the riverfront, Cuyahoga Riverfront, forward. As Nadia indicated and gave you a background on Bedrock, we have been engaged with the community for many, many years. In 2021, Nadia was here in front of the council as we advanced the first iteration of our master development agreement. And at that point in time, working in partnership with the administration and the council, I really want to thank Councilman McCormick, our ward councilman, and representative for all of his support. Through our due diligence period, we were successful in coming in front of City Planning Commission in May of this year, and pleased to share again that the City Planning Commission did approve the conceptual master plan framework that will do a broad overview today. Everyone is very familiar with the site of the Bedrock properties in and around Tower City, from Public Square to the riverfront. And we also are very respectful of the history of our site and our working river, the Federal Navigation Channel, the industrial artery that this channel serves as to drive economic viability into Greater Cleveland and the region. But as we traverse this site and its history, we have to recognize the challenges that are in front of all of us as we work together to get unprecedented accessibility to our waterfront. And in doing so, we're navigating from a 100-foot level on Huron Road, call it zero at the river. And how do you start to traverse that and reconnect our waterfront to our central business district and to the Vision for the Valley conceptual plan that's been approved by the City of Cleveland as we intertwine this investment into all of our neighborhoods and our core. When you think about the perspective of navigating down to the riverfront from Tower City Center today, you'll see that through a variety of some natural, but mostly man-made obstacles, we are fundamentally blocked from the riverfront, starting with a 100-foot bridge and drop that is Huron Road into a parking lot, Canal Road, which you can see, current Canal Road at the 30-foot level, another parking lot, and then navigating your way into the riverfront. So how do we start to think about making that accessibility and connection not only to the core, but as we focus on the infrastructure improvements that Bedrock will work with the city and a multitude of partners and public space, public park improvements, how do we make sure we're connecting not just to public square, not just core to shore to core, shore to core to shore, but also intertwining into the key aspects of infrastructure that drive us into the neighborhoods of Cleveland. So as Nadia mentioned, we will be working together with all of our public and private partners to develop Ohio's largest transit-oriented neighborhood, driving a mixed-use, comprehensive waterfront neighborhood, connecting shore to core to shore. The delivery over the course of the investment time, again, which we'll talk about phase development over the next 20 years. But Bedrock is committed to working with our partners to deliver 12-plus acres of public space on the Cuyahoga Riverfront, comprised of a variety of improvements, including new parks, a river walk, a rehabilitated and rebuilt bulkhead, which again protects our federal navigation shipping channel, but will also provide access to the waterfront, public access streets, plazas, bike paths, multimodal access that will connect into other important investments and priorities of the city, including the Memorial Loop that I know our council representatives on the near west side have been working for a long period of time. To Nadia's point, this is a project that will focus on driving equitable opportunities for business growth, expansion, and retention. It will stimulate job creation, and we will work together with our private sector community and public to attract, retain, and most important, develop talent. Again, this will be a multimodal mobility investment with ADA accessibility to the waterfront that will not only meet state standards, but we plan to work with our partners to exceed state standards for ADA accessibility. 3,000 lineal feet of bulkhead will be redeveloped. This, combined with the investment that this community and the leadership of this city in the administration and council have focused on Irish Town Bend, will account for 30% of improved rebuilt bulkhead on our navigation channel. And of course, we will provide over 2,000 units of residential housing, affordable, workforce, market rate, and for sale as we move the vision of the project forward. This next slide represents the current programming structure anticipated for the riverfront development in concert with the master plan as approved by City Planning Commission in May. Over the course of the development period, Bedrock anticipates conducive with market absorption, financing, and economics, a 3.5 million square foot mixed-use development. Again, 12 acres of public and open space, 2,000 units of residential, an anticipated 1.4 million square feet of non-residential investment, office, hospitality, retail, entertainment, and of course, an adaptive reuse of the Grand Dame itself, Tower City Center. As we look at circulation of the project back into the central business district, in concert with the vision for the valley and our surrounding neighborhoods, we will leverage the investments anticipated on the riverfront to connect back in to the key assets and amenities that this community has invested in for the last 30-plus years. This includes, of course, the Gateway District site for both Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, Progressive Field, and our Lower Euclid District in the Warehouse District as well to the west. It will connect to the Flats as well as Irish Town Bend, Public Square, and ultimately through the work that Jeff and Ahmed have brought today with the Overlay District for conceptual consideration, connecting to our lakefront as well. We plan to rebuild key components of infrastructure to access the site, including, you'll notice in the West 3rd Street Gateway Progressive southeast corner of the site, a rebuild of the Eagle Avenue Bridge connector from Ontario to West 3rd, a key critical connection back to the central business district throughout the site, a relocation of canal, and as you can see from the rendering, scores of access to the riverfront, public parks, public plazas, and access. When we think about the public space investments, it is the foundational investment that allows the entire project to move forward. By rehabilitating 3,000 lineal feet of bulkhead, we are able to frame the site and bring in the required fill for the relocation of key infrastructure and to provide the development pads necessary for the ultimate vertical development of the project. That is all anchored on the banks of the Cuyahoga River and will set a foundation for investment going forward. Key public open space investments are articulated on the left, including to the west, in item 1, more than 5 acres of public parks to be developed along the Carter Road Avenue to the west and the new Canal Road along the riverfront. A stepped lawn that will provide access into Tower City Center as a key arcade, a city of arcades that will grant continuous access to Public Square. And of course, to the item 4 on Collision Bend, which we refer to more affectionately as Canal Bend, the infusion of an outdoor amphitheater. That also includes to the southeast side an anticipated kayak paddleboard inlet providing access for the public directly to the waterfront in concert with the Army Corps and the Coast Guard to make sure that, of course, we are protecting the channel, but we're also making sure we're approaching this from the utmost safety for our residents and visitors who will utilize the Cuyahoga Riverfront. As we think about phasing for the project, again, we're all very familiar with the site as it currently resides today. Over the course of the next 60 to 72 months, we anticipate advancing development on the project, including starting with infrastructure improvements, which we will look forward to beginning next month on the bulkhead. Over the course of this 7-year period, we will look to develop approximately 5 acres of open space and public access, and are also working diligently to advance our first 1 million square feet of vertical build along the riverfront, Ontario, and Huron. I want to thank the city and especially Chief Tewan for her support. We successfully secured our nationwide permit from the Army Corps of Engineers for the project in June. It took 110 days, which I think we all know in our experience is an unprecedented approval, and it happened because of the strength and the coordination and collaboration of this public-private partnership. So many thanks to the city, as well as the port and other agencies. As we look out 10 years, we anticipate continuing our build from the southeast side to the west. We'll move forward closer to the Tower City Center aspects along Huron, and again, delivering 9 acres of total public space, along with a new Riverwalk, new infrastructure, accessibility, and connections into Tower City Center to Public Square. Again, it is critical that the importance of building the foundation of the place sets the stage for the vertical development and also sets the stage for the market absorption, as we'll be able to work together to create more value and more investment over the course of the next several years. As we look out into a 20-year window, this is conceptually the master plan in totality built along the Cuyahoga Riverfront and to the Tower City Center to Public Square. Again, the reason we're also going southeast to west is not only the right place to start from the infrastructure standpoint, but I'm sure the council is very much aware that earlier this year we closed on the acquisition of the Sherwin-Williams properties, both the landmark office tower and the Breen Technology Center, as well as the historic B&O Railroad facility at the western edge of our project. We do have Sherwin-Williams occupying the Breen Tech Center until their R&D center in Brecksville is completed, which is on schedule and anticipated to be done at the end of 2024. Renderings of the possibilities as we move forward with the implementation of the project. This is a rendering of the western end of the park that we described being investments on the Carter-Huron edge. A new canal road to be developed along the riverfront as one of the most comprehensive, complete streets, allowing for pedestrian activities, respite, a two-way protected bike lane, a new canal road, and plenty of park access to the riverfront. This is a rendering of what we anticipate being the Cleveland Steps on the eastern edge of the property at the Huron-Ontario interchange, quote-unquote, knuckle. Bedrock is committed to investing in access through a series of steps and ramps, elevators, and lifts that will allow the public to directly access off Huron Road with connection to the Hope Memorial Bike Loop and new pedestrian ways down to the riverfront. Perhaps one of our most historic views in the city, as you can imagine, one of our freighters traversing Collision Bend and heading upriver. A shot from southeast to west of massings, renderings. This is not architecturally designed, more so placeholder massings that show the possibilities and the deliverables that will be coming forth in this project as we move collectively in partnership with the city and the administration and council. We always have to make sure we recognize our climate change. And an overall view shed of what we hope and know that working together in continued collaboration, innovation, structure, and dedication can move forward in a 20-year investment to transform the Cuyahoga Riverfront and deliver this project to the city of Cleveland, Greater Cleveland, and the region. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back to Nadia. Mr. Chair, always happy to answer questions at your discretion.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going
We're going to take it on.
Okay, so good morning, Mr. Chairman and members
All
of
right.
the committee. So we have a couple of slides here to go over high-level overview of the master development agreement. This slide is really just some background on Bedrock. Large full-service commercial real estate firm in really doing business in Detroit and here, focusing on urban cores. So next is the overall summary of the development agreement itself. So as Jeff mentioned at the outset, this agreement is intended to set the framework for how the city and Bedrock will work together over that 20-year time period in implementing the master plan. The agreement, importantly, does not commit any city dollars at this stage to the project. This is, again, setting the framework. Commitment of funds will come in separate pieces of legislation and separate agreements to follow once the phasing and the budgets are ready for the work and we have the TIF structures in place is when we'll start talking actual public support for the project in terms of the financing. But there's a lot that is important to get done in advance of that financing work, and that's what this agreement does. It kind of sets the broad outline of the field that we're going to play on, kind of tells us where the boundaries are, and then in the future we'll deal with exactly what that field looks like. And so in here there are sections dealing with permitting, zoning, project approvals, the actual construction of the public improvements, and kind of the overall approach we're going to take as partners in that work. It also sets up a broad outline of the financing structures that we would seek to use for the future work, discussing things like the TIF district, project TIFs, other kinds of reimbursement financing, et cetera, if there is a need to do that. And then really just kind of provides the platform for which that'll happen. So it's really important that we get this agreement in place at the outset. I know that there are a lot of questions about the details and exactly how this will get implemented in practice. That work is yet to come. It was essential that we get this in place, have the certainty of this arrangement so that we can then transition to the specifics of a particular phase and the financing and the deliverables of that phase. So I think with that, I think that kind of hits the overview of the agreement itself. And here is a bit of a summary of some of the items that Jeff described earlier in terms of the kinds of financing tools that we intend to use. One of the primary commitments in the development agreement that the city is making is to do what it can to help make the project financially feasible. And that's, we're going to straddle and really pay attention to that line so that we are providing the necessary support to help the project succeed, because if it does succeed, then these tools will be even more impactful both downtown and in the neighborhoods. And then, as Jeff had noted about school compensation, it's really a matter of, to the extent necessary and mutually agreed, that we would want to pursue a portion of the school aspect of the service payments, that we would work collaboratively with the school district to ensure that they're made whole and provided upfront cash if that's what's needed to help ensure that the project gets done successfully. I think that it's essential for the success of these TIFs and the project that we commit the resources that are needed to make it feasible. It will also, at some point, become reaffirming. It'll create a virtuous cycle that if the project gets off to a good start, that success will breed more success in the future, which will then increase the output of these TIF tools that we're using to enable us to invest in other projects in the downtown core and also, as Jeff described, in the neighborhoods.
Just one more point on financing before we move on from this. The agreement, as Ahmed outlined, kind of covers the blueprint for how we're going to finance. It does not anticipate general fund dollars. It does not anticipate any reserves. The public financing from the city is all expected to be through these TIF instruments and through other dollars that we're raising at the state and federal levels. Which essentially is all new revenue that is generated from tax growth.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And next is a slide on the community benefit agreement, so I'll kick that over to Jeff and the Bedrock team.
Yeah, Nadia, I think hit this pretty strongly in her opening. When we do come back at any point to council with a specific project financing agreement that outlines financing for a project, we will come with the community benefits agreement. Right after we get this adopted, we're going to roll up our sleeves and start working on that with Nadia. They were part of the feedback process in the CBO adoption, are familiar with the CBO. We've had a lot of great conversations on really innovative and robust ways to build community benefits into that. So that will be coming. Nadia, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I can hear Kofi's voice in my ear about this very point.
So that's good enough. Nothing else to add. We hear it all constantly.
I hear it right here. Okay.
So to the chair, that's the presentation. This is a kind of summary of agreement that we've spent a lot of hours with. We've had outside counsel engage with the city on this, and happy to take any questions.
Sure. Thank you all. Thank you to the Bedrock team. Thank you to the administration for the presentation this morning. I'm sure there's a lot of questions that the members of the committee has. Before we move to the committee, just a few questions from me. To council staff and to administration, can we get a copy of the original MDA executed back in November 21, 2021?
Through the chair, yes, it was November 2021.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we make sure we get a copy of that so the committee can see what initially was put in place? All right. That'll be helpful. Jeff, you just mentioned, and I know the Bedrock team touched on other public commitments, state and federal. Can you tell us where you are in those commitments with those state and federal partners, administration, Bedrock?
Yeah, through the chair. So we are viewing kind of the totality of the public infrastructure plans for downtown, lakefront, riverfront, as one broad initiative to really reimagine downtown. And so we are working to develop a consolidated presentation essentially that we can deliver to our partners down in Columbus and in DC in an effort to raise, whether it be one-time appropriations or access particular grant programs at the state or federal levels and loan programs. And the idea is we need to bring as much state and federal money to the city as we possibly can to support these projects to offset the burden on the city to provide the needed public subsidy for these projects. So our intent is to get as much as we possibly can from Columbus and DC, which will then allow us to stretch our local dollars further and advance other key initiatives as we know we have a lot to do in the city.
Got it. So that is ongoing, and you all are working to finalize the plans.
Yes, and
Okay.
through the chair, we've had several meetings with the governor's office, lieutenant governor's office,
Yes.
Department of Development down in Columbus. We've with the White House, the mayor has had meetings with staff in the White House. We've also had discussions with leadership at the Department of Transportation, which is interestingly the source of a lot of the federal money that can be brought to bear on projects like these. And in addition, I've had a lot of engagement with Senator Sherrod Brown's office, particularly focusing on kind of Congress's ability to make one-time appropriations available through the budgeting process.
Good. Have you all communicated with Congresswoman Chantel Brown's office as well?
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, I believe she and her staff have come to City Hall and met with staff here to discuss the lakefront and riverfront projects, and we continue to work with both Representative Brown and Senator Brown to ensure that we get as much federal money as possible.
Absolutely. Both houses are very important.
Yes.
You know, not one over the other. Okay. Thank you. Want to add anything?
Yeah, just to the chair, we brought Congresswoman Brown's office through for a tour this summer. Bedrock presented, Lakefront presented. We took them all around all the sites, so they're very well versed.
Good. Thank you. And before we move on, another question. You mentioned that currently there will be no city general fund dollars or city reserve dollars, special revenue fund dollars put into the project. Do you anticipate at the moment any other city subsidies outside of general fund dollars or reserve dollars that will go into supporting this project, outside of what you've outlined in the TIFs?
Yeah, through the chair, I think when it comes to, if we see a particular business locate in the city or relocate to the city, there could be incentives specific to that relocation. But in terms of the physical construction, the horizontal and vertical construction, absent a particular tenant moving moving its operations into the master plan area, I don't know that there would be other local public incentives beyond what is in the master development agreement and what would be in the financing agreements.
Okay. Okay. Good. You mentioned, just because we ended on the finance slide, so I thought that was a good place to pick up. You also mentioned that over the next 2 months, you'll be going through, putting together projections of what the potential TIF proceeds will look like, some sort of modeling. Well, please make sure you include in that modeling that you put together, when the city will begin to receive some sort of, when will be in the green, basically. When will we see some sort of return on the investments that are being made into the project? Because that's important to kind of know where we will begin to see some light through this process. Obviously, folks will argue you'll see the light once you see, the dirt being moved and things, cranes in the sky, but, I'll argue that there's two parts of, light at the tunnel. And the financial part is one of them as well. All right. So make sure that we include that when you do your modeling and your projections related to the TIFs as well. Okay. All right. Where are we? There was a few other. You talked about the community benefits. I'm gonna just jump back. No, before we go there, with the school conversation that you've had with the superintendent. You've had that discussion already, right?
The chair, yes.
Can you share briefly how that conversation went and where you all left it?
To the chair, yeah, we've had several conversations, started with the school's council and then with the superintendent and some senior staff. I think they remain very open to want to see development in the city, want to see the economic growth that comes to that and accrues to them, want to work collaboratively with the city to make sure we can recognize that benefit and growth. They expressed an openness to understanding the numbers of what the TIF district, the short of core district overlay would look like, and what an upfront payment might look like to the schools if we were to make it not a exclusively non-school TIF. And so we will be, as we're doing the analysis over the coming months, we'll be dialoguing regularly with them to see if there is a win-win there. Okay, good. And also, as we move along, thank you, Chief, to the Bedrock team. As we move along, as you saw with the Hawthorne School site, we provided a more detailed slide about the financing side. Kind of where the developer's equity is, where maybe the debt is, whether it's through some sort of mortgage, whatever it is. The TIF, and can you make sure that when you present the documents to us, that we also have a understanding of the project's capital stack, and I'm sure that it will change as the phases change, but just for us to have an idea of kind of who's where and what's happening as we move along through the project. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, yes, we'll continue to work with Jeff and Ahmed on that and deliver it in both sequential investments for public and the private investment.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Okay, I think this is my last point before I turn over to the committee and the Ward 3 council person. Just to go back to the TIFs, TIF overlay district can only be used for public purposes, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, in the slide it says that, but in the executive summary that was sent over on page 3, just to make it clear in case folks are watching and folks who may, have to get a copy of this document, there's a TIF, you have the TIF overlay district and you also have the project TIF districts, all right? And so one can see that and be confused about the district versus the project TIF, and which can be used for only public purposes and which is used for the private use, which is the building of the actual project itself. Can you just briefly go back and make sure that it is clear that the TIF overlay district will only be used for public purposes, and that the project TIF will then return within that district be used for the actual vertical structure itself?
To the chair.
The structure could be horizontal too, but I guess horizontally vertical. Go ahead.
Yes, we will, and I believe it should be clear in the development agreement. We'll double check.
Okay. Thank you. And lastly, as relates to community benefits, on the executive summary, on the last page of that, I see a lot of words like exploring and, the goal, when I see those words, I want to just make sure that, that there's been conversations from this council, the leadership, myself, and the administration to make sure that we have, and I know that Bedrock and the family of companies have been very intentional about making sure that there is high levels of participation in workforce goals on these projects, which you all have exceeded on many of, I'm sure all of your projects. I know the ones that I know of personally that, you have exceeded. That is, there's a hard line there, right? I know that this project will be subject to a community benefits agreement. When I look at the summary, 4, 5, and 6 says exploring, right? Can you, again, just briefly speak to us about, the intent of Bedrock and the really hard commitment to making sure that, there's a, as we talked about, having a minority partner, on this project, construction partner, making sure that, opportunities are really meaningful as relates to the work that's going to be done on this project.
Thank you, Chairman. We do intend, as with any agreement, this is a framework. The expectation is when we come back with the community benefits agreement, there will be more specificity in terms of what we will be delivering. Okay. The expectation is through the work in the next month or two, we'll have more specific goals in discussions with the city, definitely advance, be more specific about percentages, trying to collaborate with and use existing programs or the opportunity to create new ones so that we can create capacity and in terms of workforce as well as be able to deliver. We already have practiced this, so it's simply just formalizing some of this because that's what we do, both in Detroit and in Cleveland. We definitely, as Deb alluded to, we are a strong proponent of inclusive housing. So with the negotiation, we'd want to explore what percentages make sense, how we invest on-site, and also alternatives of investing in the neighborhoods, similar to what we've done in Detroit. And then more importantly, it's thinking through how we continue to advance some of the neighborhood investment fund that's been discussed. So the expectation is when we come with the development agreement,
have those lined up.
We'll have more specificity to respond to all of those.
Good. Thank you. As we move on to the committee for questions, I'm going to start with Councilman McCormick first, then we'll move to the other members of the committee. Councilman. Okay, got it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate this opportunity and the team here with us today. Good to see you all, to our chiefs as well. I'm going to start with a little bit of linguistics here. I'm hearing a little bit of the downtown and then our neighborhood. So just a reminder to everybody, it's our downtown neighborhood and then our neighborhoods outside of our downtown neighborhood. I can see my 20,000 residents downtown Cleveland looking at me right now. So just as a pointer,
Thank you.
Little mark there. including your boss is one of them. So anyways, all right, moving on. So Chair, I really appreciate the structure, and I want to recognize you, Mr. Chairman, too, for your diligence and hard work on this. I know you've been intimately involved in the process and ensuring that not only this is done equitably, but it is looked at as in the perspective of the entire city, which I think is critical to the success of this project. So I really appreciate your work on this. I think this is a really exciting, positive step for this framework, and to recognize the mayor's administration too for many gray hairs and a lot of hours of work on this as well. As has been stated, there are a lot of really bold, big plans with this plan and the lakefront and other throughout the city of Cleveland. We've seen a lot of these plans in the past. And you ask any Clevelander how many lakefront plans we've gone to, how many riverfront plans we've gone through that have sat on a shelf. So I think the critical question, Mr. Chairman, that we have to ask ourselves is how do we get a plan that embraces public space, that embraces equity, that embraces redeveloping, quite frankly, an entire riverfront that is really not accessible to our community over the finish line and actually get it done? And how do we do that in a way that does not restrict resources for the day-to-day operations of the city of Cleveland and our residents? And so I'm really, really excited to continue to dig into this idea of the TIF district that will say not existing values downtown, but how do we take this future wealth that will be built downtown, invested in public infrastructure, and then also invested in neighborhoods outside of the downtown neighborhood, to ensure that we're investing throughout the entire city of Cleveland from Ward 1 to 15, 17 to 8. So I'm really, really excited about this framework and how we can really achieve both of those goals and do it in a way that we are not impacting at all our general fund or the resources that we need to plow streets and keep health centers open and put police officers on the street and all those types of things. So I'm excited that the city is taking this initiative to look at new approaches, because honestly, what we've done in the past has not gotten us there. So how do we look at frameworks that leverage value in downtown, not only to get these big, bold projects that will benefit our whole city, but also to create value for projects outside of the downtown neighborhood too. So I think we've seen in other cities across Ohio, Mr. Chairman, where this has been used really effectively to build up their cities. And it's great that the city of Cleveland is doing this. I appreciate too, Chair, the conversation with the school district. I'm a little bit haunted by the conversation we had on the nucleus site, because we would have had a huge development there and $60 million in the pocket of the school district. This is prior to your administration. We have neither one of those now because of politics. So I am thankful that, number one, we're always protecting our schools, first and foremost, but number two, we are having those types of conversations, because when that deal died, we had neither one of those two things. And then the school district was short on capital funds to build our schools. So not only did we not get the project, we got no new revenue, no new investment, and we got no new capital for the school district. It was a lose, 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 lose. So I'm reminded of there is a consequence for inaction, and there is a value for inaction. So that's just a personal soapbox for a moment. I'm old, been on council for a minute, so I have these memories of when we don't get creative with our work, how we can lose, lose, lose across the board. So, Chair, as you noted, the community benefits is critical here, not only on the projects along the riverfront, but also how we create value for neighborhoods outside of the downtown neighborhood. I want to commend Bedrock. From the very beginning, it was not, oh, we're going to build a project, shoot, we need community benefits, let's scramble to put something together. I mean, from the very first day, it was, this will be a part of the very first conversation till the last light pole's installed, right? I mean, they were clear, as the chairman noted, and to, channel Mike Polensek, proof is always in the pudding. But I really do appreciate that this was something that has been built in to the triple bottom line from day one. I mean, you guys have, and we've seen that in your work in Detroit and other places. So Really appreciate that, and I know that this committee will stay on top of those expectations as well. But again, as a framework, Mr. Chair, I'm very excited about this and how do we use new and innovative tools to hold the city's budget harmless, but also to really expand on the value in our downtown neighborhood and neighborhoods across the city of Cleveland to get these innovative projects that we've all heard about for decades, not this one, but others for decades and decades, finally cross the finish line and take a riverfront that our residents have no access to today, or very limited access, and create public access to our riverfront. And as the chief knows and Director Wong knows, I will never support a project in Ward 3 on any riverfront or on any waterfront that touches water that isn't completely publicly accessible along that waterfront. It's a non-starter for me, whether it's the lake or the river, East Bank, West Bank, must be full public access to everybody in the community, hard stop before you, and this, achieves that goal. So really, Mr. Chair, taking a lot of private property that our residents have no access to, turning it into a really vibrant public space, mixed use, and creating, innovative economic development tools to achieve that goal. So I support this framework, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate yourself and our committee. Going to continue to keep tabs as it develops and matures. And with that, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Councilman McCormick. Great questions. Thank you for your comments. Before we move to Councilwoman Santana and then Councilman Jones, what would be the accessibility points along the water, the riverfront there? Will it be, can you go back to the slide that has the current and the 5 to 7 year?
Jeff, right. One more.
You want
There
this
we
one?
go.
Whichever one you
That's
think
fine.
you can better
Why
explain.
don't we go to the, Mr. Chair, let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, to the committee, terrific question, and the one that really is the foundation for advancing the project on the whole. Again, I mentioned earlier, there are ways to connect that have to incorporate some relocation of existing facilities, primarily Canal Road, but new investments that will drive not just the connection in the project area, but the thought process has to be, how does the project connect to the broader downtown neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods? On the lower right-hand side, Mr. Chair, can I get up?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead. Mr. President, we need to add a really strong pointer to our budget, sir.
I'm going to talk really loud, so hopefully the folks that know we are live on Channel 20 and how important it is to make sure our constituents hear. As you think about the framework of the site, this is 35 acres that Bedrock completely owns today. Starting on the southeast side, we will rebuild the former Eagle Ramp connector. Back in the day, as you thought about the history site, Eagle Bridge would come down, connect to Eagle Lift Bridge, and continue its way to Scranton Peninsula. Today, the connection of Eagle Avenue from Ontario to West 3rd is bifurcated. As you stand outside Progressive Field, there is an intersection there, there is an abutment, there is a stairway for pedestrians to get down. Part of the key components of the project is to rebuild the Eagle Bridge connector for connection back into the Gateway District and Gatewood neighborhood, and also to provide connective tissue into the fundamental infrastructure of our project. This is, make sure I'm looking at this correct. Okay, so this is Old Canal Road here. And we are proposing to build a new canal road, so stay with me. This is West 3rd Street. Old Canal today, coming off Commercial or coming off the west end of the flats, connects into the project and goes directly through the middle of what we know will be the later developable paths for vertical development. In order to set the framework of the foundation through the public infrastructure investment, we will rebuild the 3,000 lineal feet of our bulkhead. We will have to bring in tons and tons and tons of clean fill to stabilize and lift the site. Canal Road will be pushed 200 feet towards the river and created into a new promenade along the riverfront, the complete street we saw in the rendering. It will connect to the Eagle Road Bridge, allowing for an intersection at the connection for an individual on bike, walk, car, scooter, motorcycle to connect in and head to the west, head back into the Central Business District, or head into the valley. Canal Road will exit New Canal on the existing connection that comes behind the existing Sherwin-Williams facility into the Carter Road area. So this whole new Canal Street will be here, and it will be used primarily for residents, for neighborhood deliveries, your DoorDash, your Amazon. What's exciting about the project is we will maintain connectivity of Old Canal today into the framework of the project. It will become a service connector under Huron Road and within the parking facilities to be developed. And it will be able to accommodate the largest of largest trucks. So deliveries, and taking that heavier truck traffic specific to the site, will be able to continue, but it will not be on the fundamental city right-of-way public access street of Canal. So we'll be able to really incorporate that within the structure of the project itself. In addition, we are planning 2 sets of stairway, ramps, lifts, and elevators on the western end behind the courthouse, and on the eastern end at the knuckle of Huron and Ontario.
Okay.
Those steps will connect to our facilities for ADA accessibility. There will be underground connections through the parking garages and facilities below, and they will be tied in to new developed plazas, bike paths, multimodal ways on Huron Avenue, really maximizing that accessibility into the project. And of course, the center of it all is Tower City Center. As we look to make sure we're going from shore to core to shore, as the chiefs have articulated, Bedrock will leverage Tower City Center as the largest hub of transit in the state of Ohio and connection to our transit system by making the improvements necessary to leverage this arcade through a series of steps, plazas, etc., into Tower City, adaptively reused, renovated, and it will traverse all the way out to Public Square. So you're maximizing perhaps the grandest arcade in the city of grand arcades as we think about the Hyatt and we think about the Colonial. We will also be making significant improvements to Huron Road, to the neighboring West 2nd, West 3rd, West 6th, and really leveraging Prospect Avenue for what I can be one of the most vibrant, complete streets and really act as that parkway with accessibility into all of our facilities, but as well as key connections. And we're working very, very closely on all the traffic impact assessment work with MOCAP, with our engineers, with Commissioner Mavick, and with our partners at ODOT and NOAC.
Got it. Thank you. That's important because as the councilman was talking about, accessibility and how do you get to all of the work that's going to be done, and so you're going to have a middle area to connect you to the transit hub to Tower City, and then you're going to have 2 points on each ends of the riverfront, plus the area where the Old Canal and the Eagle Bridge one said. Okay, good. So it allows for different spots along the riverfront for you to access. Okay. Councilwoman Santana.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. Through the chair, I had an opportunity to meet with Bedrock leadership team, so I don't have many questions. And of course, today they were most of them were answered. But I also echo my colleague, Councilman McCormick's remarks about being equitable for neighborhoods. But I know today specifically we're passing legislation so that you guys could start, the economic development could start partnering and to raise funds. But I really want to hone in on this just experience that that as a council person I've witnessed. As soon as the word is out that there's development taking place, we know that property values start, rising. Property owners start selling their homes, and the neighborhoods closest to downtown really are impacted by development, right? That happens in every city that I've visited, it has happened. So I'm curious to know through the chair, and maybe this is for Chief, I know we're still in the planning stages, but we have to get in front of that, and I'm curious to know if that's something that you're planning ahead before any type of development or this phase starts in downtown, as far as helping residents with home
Chief,
repairs,
Chief.
property ownership.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilwoman, I mean, yes, I think we're always doing our best to try to plan for success in projects like this. I think that happens in a variety of different ways depending on the neighborhood and the project. Community land trust models, all the home repair funding that we pass through, the rescue plan dollars, and rehab money, and I think the continual effort at gap financing and affordable housing. But I do think more broadly, this tool of the overlay district, I think, is a really interesting tool that could potentially be used in other neighborhoods outside of downtown across the city to create districts where we think growth is coming, and to be able to invest that in the kind of public infrastructure that can support affordable housing and amenities and things that can kind of benefit residents who are there. So I think that is a tool that we're going to be looking to deploy beyond this short of core TIF district that we're talking downtown and other neighborhoods of the city going forward.
Okay, thank you, through the chair, Chief. Thank you for that. Ward 14 was impacted as soon as Metro Health, launched their news that they were going to invest in our area. I mean, I started kind of seeing the families being displaced and coming to my office. So I always say I serve a neighborhood that's very vulnerable, that is on the west side. So if we could kind of keep that, forefront. But I will say also through the chair, and I brought this up at the meeting, Rocket Mortgage, what are they doing to increase home owner occupancy in our area? And that's a conversation maybe that we need to have, but it's a mechanism that we could use. I don't know what's the percentage now, but if maybe they could kind of step up and help, especially the neighborhoods closest to downtown, that would be helpful. And then just last but not least, just out of curiosity, I know you guys are still raising funds, but for you to start this first phase, how much money is in place for you guys to start the development? And where did that funding come from?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, to the councilwoman, it's a great question. And as I know the chief will be providing additional copies of the original development agreement, Bedrock started this in 2021 when we inked the first development agreement, and our commitment was to use our resources to conduct the due diligence necessary to get to where we are today. And so it is the investment of Bedrock through our ownership, Dan Gilbert, through our CEO, Kofi Bonner, that allowed Nadia to start this work, that allowed me to join this company now for almost 2 years, which is hard to believe. We're going to continue to invest our resources to advance that. We're doing so through our engineering, design, construction, our national and local consultants as we continue to advance our work. We're excited about the conversation today as it sets that stage and framework for the public-private partnership going forward. But as we move towards work and hoping to start moving dirt around, I think one of our council folks said that next month we will continue to use our resources in a manner consistent with the agreement put forth in front of you, and then leveraging those equity commitments that continue forward in the public-private partnership. That will allow us to demonstrate commitment, viability, get the work started, continue to attract vertical development, which is critical to the growth, and also leverage the public-private partnership that the CFO announced today to make sure that we're talking in an aligned fashion to Columbus and to the federal government, both our representatives and our departments, to bring those critical, unprecedented investments home to Cleveland. We believe fundamentally, we know it will be easier when we do it together and we really demonstrate that long-term public-private commitment. So we'll keep going and we'll keep moving forward as we work through the ultimate financing agreements with your approval in the future.
Thank you, Deb. And I would just close with saying this. I'm excited for two things. First of all, I went to Detroit maybe about 10 years ago and realized all the investment and all the development that has taken place has transformed Detroit. So I definitely want to take a tour. I mean, I think council members really need to take a tour. And any residents that are looking at us, I mean, look at the story of Detroit, Michigan, and you'll see how Bedrock has transformed that area. But two is I remember growing up in downtown in the Higbee times, you know, with Mr. Jingle, and it was just, you know, this is where we used
You
to.
went way back.
Yeah, I went back, and the talking tree.
Come on.
Yeah, see, but it was like I think Mickey Mouse came to Tower City as well. I remember
In
being there, but it was-
1990, that's
yeah,
right.
so
Yep.
it was the best time, and we used to do all of our shopping in downtown. And I'm hoping that we get to that place again where you could, you know, families could take their kids to downtown and really enjoy the amenities here in the city of Cleveland. So I will close with that.
And
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, to the Councilwoman, as you talk about Rocket Mortgage and our Rocket Mortgage Community Foundation, which our colleague Laura Graneman out of Detroit spearheads, continued investment in the neighborhoods, working closely with many of the council folks, our neighborhood groups. We will come back to discuss that further and continue to articulate the family of companies on the whole, including Bedrock, as we advance our commitment and work in Cleveland and Greater Cleveland.
Thank you, Deb. And you just reminded me of something. Through the chair, Deb, I know that right after our meeting, you had a community meeting in Ward 14, Hispanic Business Center. I'm curious to know, you collect the feedback from residents and business owners. How do we get access to that feedback, just for us to understand what our residents are saying?
Sure. Mr. Chair, to the Councilwoman, our colleague Nora Romanoff had to step out for another meeting. Nora is spearheading the local community engagement effort in tandem with Nadia and her team, and we will make sure to get you the feedback from that meeting, as well as other public feedback we've garnered over the course of the last due diligence period. And it was our longest meeting. It was fantastic.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman Santana. Great questions. Yeah, I also like the point about maybe we all take a trip. So, you know, call Kofi, call Dan, and tell me fuel up the plane. Let's go. I'll meet you at Burke. Let's go. No, I'm just kidding. But thank you for that, Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to, I want to put this investment here where it needs to be. This is probably one of the most single significant investments, I believe and want to say, in the history of the city, with the exception of the building of the stadium as relates to the ballpark and the Cavs back in the 90s. Want to also underscore a little historical perspective here, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I have family that lives in Detroit, Michigan. And I can recall, Mr. Chairman, how bad Detroit, Michigan was. Detroit, and how it went bankrupt, and how the state came in and took over receivership of the city, and just how bad the neighborhood was, and in fact it had systematically failed on all levels, and for 30 years there had been no investment in the urban core of Detroit, and part of that was due because of the mayor who served at that particular period of time, and to see then Mayor Archer began the proposition to work and start turning the city around. And at that time, I knew very little of Mr. Gilbert, but Mr. Gilbert started to buying up property in Detroit. And we started to, I could go there and rent a room for $40, $50, $60, a night. Now, if you go downtown Detroit, and if you're lucky to get a room, you're spending $300, $400, or $500 just to be in the downtown area because it has been built up so much. And part of that development is been because of Mr. Gilbert's organizations there in Detroit, Michigan. And to see how they have fundamentally redeveloped that entire city is just absolutely phenomenal from my standpoint of going back and forth to Detroit over the course of 25 to 30 years. I want to say that, you know, as I sit here at this table, I've seen a number, and this is where I've had to ask some of the old political folks this question. Why is it that in the city of Cleveland, we've had some phenomenal people who have been here in this city, who have went on to invest and redevelop cities all across the United States of America, but they're sitting right here in our core, in our backyard, and they're redeveloped Boston. They didn't redevelop Pittsburgh. They didn't redevelop Washington, D.C., but they have not made any kind of significant investments like that here in this city. So to see Mr. Gilbert come in and invest into these properties, and I'm hoping that you will continue to look at other ways and means to invest, not just stop here on this particular site. But I think that this will help to spur the kind of economic development the city has longed to see for a very long time. And I believe, Mr. Chairman, if it's done right, and it seems like it's being processed and thoughtfully carried out on how public financing would work in this proposition. And I know that there's a lot more work that needs to be done, and I certainly would like to participate in that process as we're going down the road. It is my understanding, Mr. Chairman, as I want to bring some points forward that I think that is really super important. The first one is that we've seen a lot of developments throughout the years in the city of Cleveland. And we've had only a handful of minority businesses, the same people, all the time, always getting the contracts. And then it's, quote, that's considered the minority neighborhood. And when all of these multi-million, even with Gateway, we did not see the kind of investments or contracts given to minority businesses. And over the space of time, because this city's policies and some folks would even allege racism has moved minority businesses out of the city of Cleveland altogether. In fact, we are really reeling when it comes to construction and other areas now. A lot of our minority businesses, I know this as a fact, has moved out of the city to other cities where they're getting assistance, they're getting help, they're getting investments. The financial institutions are opening up their accounts to help these and support these minority businesses in Atlanta, in Florida, in Texas, even in California. But here in the city of Cleveland, we don't see those kind of financial investments. We don't see the kind of investments that should be made to assist minority businesses to get a foot up, especially those who are in the city of Cleveland and who are working hard every day. So I would just say, Mr. Chairman, as we move down this route, let's look at what we already have, but then let's look outside of that. And let's see if we can make that extra effort to help those minority businesses that are doing everything they can to survive. And I don't know if it's with smaller contracts or how we would work that out, but Mr. Chairman, to the administration, I think that we should sincerely look at how we rebuild our minority businesses in the city of Cleveland for not only this development, but other development and projects that's going down, this will be going down in the city of Cleveland. Because this, part with other projects that you're working on, will certainly be a catalyst for the redevelopment of the city of Cleveland. And I think that your investment is going to pay off here in the city of Cleveland, because we have something that no other city has, an ambiance to that lakefront. And if we can find a way to connect to our lakefront area, we can rebuild this city in leaps and bounds. And we can talk about, and what I like that's a part of this whole proposition, is that you're talking about not only how can we strategically help in the downtown area, but also with the proposition of how can we help in neighborhoods as well. So I think that that's important. I haven't seen that kind of project, Mr. Chairman, in fact, I have never seen a project like that where it talked about how we're going to do two things. We're going to invest in the downtown city of Cleveland. We're going to work with a benefits program with the city in addition to how do we look strategically at neighborhoods. And I think that that is significant, and I certainly would like to engage your organization's foundation on how you are working with Detroit and how we might be able to leverage that, because one of the things, Mr. Chairman, I want to say, for neighborhoods like mine, we have not built houses in our community in 25 years. So 25 years ago, we were building homes. Today, unfortunately, there has not been a priority to build and develop homes in the Lee Harvard area. But if the Lee Harvard area, Cam's Corner, and my colleagues Jasmine Santana's neighborhood, Anthony Harris's neighborhood, if those neighborhoods are strong, downtown is strong, we're all whole, we're a better and stronger city for it. So, but I just want to thank you, Deb, and I want to thank you, Mrs. Sensei. And now, what do you do, Mrs. Sensei?
I'm the Chief Community Growth Development Officer through the chair. I am the Chief Community Growth Development Officer for Bedrock.
Okay, so that means that you...
I do development, public-private, facilitate public-private partnership, as well as connect the work we do with the community.
Okay, great. Well, it's good to see you here.
Thank you.
And I have never had the opportunity to personally meet Mr. Dan Gilbert, but I do want to say that he is a person that, I have respect for in terms of building up the downtown area for Detroit, Michigan, where my family lives. And I have respect for the fact that he's now taking these 20-some, how many acres is it total?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, 35.
35 acres. Are we looking to do anything over here on this side at some point?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, we are looking very much forward to continue our private partnership with the city as we explore our impact throughout all of downtown. So we will stay at the table, both as a private partner on our project, but as a community partner, as this council and this administration continue to move these opportunities forward, including that body of water to the north.
Oh, I love it. So with
that
that
a
being
smooth
said,
answer?
Yeah, that's smooth. She's good. So
It's an experience.
I'm gonna leave it along there because I'm in a feel good place here right now.
Right.
And I don't want nothing to mess that up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Joe Jones. Always a pleasure. Thank you for your comments, always. Councilman Harsh, and then Spencer.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I have questions in two main areas. One is the TIF and one is land use. I'll go with land use first. So through the chair, it looks like ultimately Huron Road is going to be closed to auto traffic, or is it restricted, or what is the long-term plan for Huron? I see trees, I hear, I don't know, whatever word, multimodal use. Is it closed to traffic or not?
Mr. Chair, to the councilman, it is a change in the structure of the bridge that will reconfigure how traffic moves, including vehicular traffic. But you are correct, sir. The plan calls for consideration for the bifurcation of Huron Bridge. And if you'll indulge me, I'll go back to the map. So Bedrock is exploring, along with, again, the traffic engineering team here at the City of Cleveland, NOACA, and ODOT. We are exploring the opportunity for Huron Bridge, which is an elevated bridge structure, the 100-foot level above the riverfront. And we're pursuing an assessment that would allow for Huron Bridge to be bifurcated between West 2nd Street and West 3rd Street in front of Tower City Center. So as you think about Tower City, where the food court and the RTA walkway connector are to the field house, that is a level that if traffic impact assessment allows for the reconfiguration of the bridge, we would be able to consider in the future opening up a plaza walkway to the riverfront.
Through the chair to the lady, is Huron currently private property or public property?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, it's actually both. Bedrock owns Huron Bridge.
And through the chair, we call it bridge because it's built over a structure.
Correct.
It's
an
not
elevated structure.
what we normally see as a bridge. It's on top of a parking garage.
Right.
I think it's mostly parking garage.
Correct.
Okay.
Very interesting. Bedrock owns from the membrane down.
Right.
The city today, based on a easement exercised in the 1980s, has a right-of-way in perpetuity for vehicular travel over the bridge.
And so through the chair, then maybe to the chiefs, would we be negotiating that away, or what? What happens with that? I'm just, I mean, it's a traffic pattern question, but it's a question.
Yeah, I think through the chair, it will all flow from the traffic assessment as to what traffic patterns can be tolerated in and around Tower City. If the traffic assessment suggests that Huron Road could be split in two with West 2nd and West 3rd being the release valves off of Huron for kind of the ability to navigate around Tower City, then as part of whatever phase that fits in, we would then engage in negotiations with Bedrock as to how that works, what the obligations of the parties would be, et cetera, specific to that aspect.
The reason I'm asking, Mr. Chairman, is that I'm trying to understand what capacity we have to require public access when it's mostly private property. I share Councilman McCormick's concern about making the riverfront more accessible, and through the chair to the chiefs and our guests, I'm curious how we can actually enforce private property owners to require public access. And I understand that Huron is one of our vehicles to do that because we have that agreement already in place that is public space.
Through the chair, and Jeff to chime in as well, I think we have many different kinds of opportunities to ensure that the right kind of accessibility is built into the project. And I think it's also worth noting that in our work thus far with Bedrock, there's been sort of a completely shared commitment to ensuring that that accessibility exists. However, the extent to which the city would need to ensure that there is that accessibility, it's through the availability of public support for the project. I mean, we're going to be talking about real significant financial support for the project, and that is certainly one lever that the city has. The other is through the planning commission process in approving of the designs and the project more broadly. There's that lever as well. So I think we have, we're starting from a really good spot of shared commitment to the accessibility to the riverfront. That said, if we do need to down the road ensure that those are being taken into account, we have the tools available.
Because through the chair, we don't own anything south of Huron. That's all Bedrock owned property, I believe. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, the city does maintain ownership of Canal Road.
Canal Road.
And so, to the chief's point, we will continue to work through the relocation of that new public infrastructure, dedication, access, and components, including to the public properties. And then also, I want to make sure that I was quicker with my answer. Vehicular traffic is still anticipated to be utilized on Huron Bridge, and really maximizing Prospect Avenue as a key
big street
between Superior and Ontario.
And so Canal becomes our second publicly owned strip of land down there that allows us to leverage public access to this. I mean, I think what we don't want to see is a private development for a private, company that offers private access to the river. I mean, I think that would be a scenario we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, I think as Ahmed laid out, the intent here is public access. We've got all sorts of leverage points that will be built into our agreements.
Right.
This kind of public access, and the city's going to be paying for a good chunk of the public infrastructure here as well, and a condition of that again will be maintaining these access points.
Mr. Councilman Harsh, can you allow a very brief point from Councilman Jones? Would you allow?
Would be brief.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, my colleague, Mr. Harsh. The property that's right across from there, if we're putting that kind of development there, I mean, you would want that to be built up too. So is there a plan for the possibility of doing something there? I mean, it would be a great connector
It's the Thunderbird site.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I will respectfully defer to the Chief Development Officer of the city to tackle that.
I'm sorry. Scranton Peninsula.
Oh, my God. I
Thunderbird.
mean, I see the possibilities of just looking at this here across and then having some kind of connectivity to it, chemistry there. In my mind, it's just
Yeah,
moving 100 miles an hour.
through the councilman, through the chair to the councilman, I mean, Carter Road connects around. There is an active lift bridge connected to the Flats Industrial Railroad a little bit further south there. But absolutely, we'll be looking at as many connection points as we can find here.
Thanks, Chief. Councilman Hurst.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, so my other set of questions is understanding this TIF. So, just to take us all back to first grade TIF, TIFs are normally proposed by developers who are looking for ways to pay down their debt faster. So instead of paying increased revenue from the value of the development in taxes, they take that increased tax and they pay their debt. It doesn't sound like this is what we're being asked about, because Quickens is a very wealthy company doing very well, and Bedrock is a very well-financed organization. Instead, we're being asked to set up a TIF that will go into public infrastructure, which sounds wonderful. So my question through the chair to the chiefs and our guests, why are we discussing school TIFs if the TIF isn't for the development of the project itself? Why not just keep the schools whole and pay the entire school TIF anyway? I mean, pay the entire school tax anyway.
Through the chair, the potential of including the school portion in the TIF is that it would allow the public infrastructure work to be done more quickly, which would accelerate the timeline of the project. And then, we're talking the TIF district, we're also talking the project TIFs, which is more consistent with what you're used to seeing as a member of council, where there's a vertical development that's being done, whether it's a rehab of a building, a new construction of a building, and that will also be part of the financing package when we get to that phase of this work.
So I guess through the chair then to the chief, do we have an expected price tag for the infrastructure investment that needs to take place in order to make this happen? Has that math been done, and that's why we're considering school TIF, because we know that will need to be dipped into?
On the through the chair, on the public infrastructure piece?
Correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, we have begun our work with Osborne Engineering here in Cleveland, who is our lead engineer, and we are doing all the analysis and conceptual schematic design for the engineering. As of today, as we talk through the 12-plus acres of public space, the bulkhead, all the streets and infrastructure we talked about this morning, we are looking at a range. As I mentioned, this is a $3.5 billion investment. We're looking at an estimated range for the public improvement cost associated with the full build in a $400 to $500 million range over the life of the project.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm very, very intrigued by the idea of using a TIF to fund public infrastructure needs for the development costs. That's a very interesting concept. My ears are wide open. I'm really interested in this. I guess I really like, through the chair to the chiefs, to understand more about why we have to dip into, what the expected costs are going to, it's a large number, but when it comes to school TIFs, I get that $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow, so upfront payments are attractive, but long-term, even is the thought of talking about a percentage of levy of millage TIF. So instead of saying, here's a bunch of money schools, you're good for 30 years, say, here's some money schools and we'll pay 50% of the millage moving forward. So the schools then also have long-term benefits. I'm concerned about this being a huge development that only, buys a football stadium or something.
Through the
For
chair,
schools.
through the chair to the councilman, I think there's a lot of different conversations that we can and will explore with the schools to make sure that they are whole and benefit from this, including upside. If the taxes, if we think they're going to be here, and over time they're here, giving them a share of that upside in addition to an upfront payment. I think the exploration of, we're prepared to go forward fully with a non-school TIF on the district.
Oh,
The conversation, the outreach to the schools has been around, if there is a win-win where
You can be involved.
we dip into the schools, they could be better off, and we can generate more for public infrastructure, then let's do that. But otherwise, that's the way it was framed for the schools.
So through the chair, it's a negotiation you're having with the district to see if they see a more advantageous
Correct.
option than a regular tax payment over time.
That's correct.
That's interesting. Okay. I think I had one more question about, one back to transportation mobility. Are we good with rail access to and from Tower City? It came up in the news. I was very confused by it. I have no clue. Do we have city access to and from Tower City in all directions?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes. I mean, I think we do. The conversations, I think, have been around the potential in the short or long term to bring Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad
Correct.
up through, and where that can connect in through the project plan. But the RTA access will continue to remain as it is to Tower City. And other active rail access will continue to remain.
And would the proposal through the chair then maintain all the rail access to Tower City? We're not talking about shutting any of that down. The trains move on time.
Excuse me. Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, absolutely not. The transit hub remains a huge asset to Tower City itself. We have red, green, blue lines and the waterfront line reactivated. And as we continue to advance what we believe we can deliver is the largest transit-oriented development in Ohio, and most certainly on the waterfront. It is at the core of that, working closely with CEO Birdsong and her team at the RTA to make sure we're ensuring that continuity. So yes, that hub will stay open.
And then I have one last question, Mr. Chairman. It looks like Phase 1 development includes a large entertainment venue on the eastern edge, kind of across the street from the queue. Any disclosure on what the thought process is there?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, it is nice to meet you, sir. I've heard a lot about you. Great questions. Great questions. No, not at this point in time. As we really think about the integration of the neighborhood holistically, we see that as a massing concept that tries to leverage both the access to the river, but incorporates really what the entire Gateway District and Lower Euclid District brings from an entertainment venue perspective. So we continue to explore those as viable, but at this point in time, we have no immediate plans in place that would be able to respond in kind that it's happening.
Not Jack Casino, too.
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, it is not.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Harsh. I'm glad you get to know him. You're getting to know him.
Thank you.
It's my main man right there. We will go to Councilwoman Spencer, and then Council President Griffin will wrap us up, because I don't have anyone else on the list, unless Councilman, are you on? You good? Okay. All right, Councilwoman Spencer.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yes, I am following some really great questions that have been asked, and I will try not to be repetitive, but okay, where do I want to start? So I think this presentation opened up with that shore, core, shore, bigger picture. So I want to explore that a little bit with my questions. So first, through the chair, just to clarify that the TIF district that we're discussing today, is it the entire shore, core, shore? What is the actual TIF district that's under discussion?
To the councilwoman through the chair, the shore to core TIF district that I presented on will be in a boundary to be determined that will include much of downtown and some of the near west side, but we're still working through that. The intent is that the proceeds that TIF overlay district generates will be used for a variety of the public infrastructure improvements, including the lakefront and the waterfront, and the riverfront, rather.
Thank you. Can we go back to that slide through the chair? It was pretty much in the beginning. So just to clarify through the chair, although the exact boundaries are not under discussion today because they are still being explored, the general concept is that it would be quite a large district that would encompass, we imagine, the lakefront, parts of downtown, the riverfront.
Correct.
Okay. And I think that's important for me as a takeaway, only because the second half of the presentation has really been focused on Bedrock's activities and vision for the riverfront portion of the larger district.
That is correct. And I think to the councilwoman through the chair, in the dialogue with Bedrock about funding public improvements, this idea of a larger TIF overlay district, as other cities have used, came up, and I think it became clear in looking at the size of the district and the potential that it could generate, that it could be a tool that goes beyond just the riverfront project and could be used more broadly.
Thank you. So through the chair, likewise, improvements could include both those associated with the riverfront area near Bedrock's investment, or as part of supporting Bedrock's investment, as well as riverfront investments? Lakefront? Thank you.
Correct.
You knew what I meant.
Yes.
Okay. And potential downtown, et cetera?
Yes.
Okay. So I think, a couple numbers have been shared. I think it would be interesting to have a little bit of a refresher in terms of the order of magnitude, if we feel that number is available to us, the order of magnitude for the public infrastructure needs along the riverfront, part of the lakefront. Do we have sort of those orders? These are huge numbers. I mean, infrastructure numbers are always frankly shocking, because when we on this side of the table are scrapping for investment in our communities, and it's hard to get hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment in our communities, these infrastructure numbers are always pretty eye-popping and mind-boggling. Yeah. But I think it would be helpful to have that context through the chair.
So through the chair, as Deb noted, the riverfront-related public infrastructure needs are somewhere in the realm of $400 million to $500 million. Those are certainly the most refined numbers we have for public infrastructure needs on the city's waterfronts. We are currently working to refine our estimates for the lakefront infrastructure costs. So we don't have those yet to share publicly, but we're working as diligently as we can, because we need those numbers for our outreach to Columbus and DC, so we know what we're asking for. We know what the gaps are and what we should be requesting from the state and federal governments to try to fill those gaps.
Thank you. So through the chair, we don't even have a rough order of magnitude of what we anticipate for, do we anticipate that lakefront would be similar in order of magnitude to riverfront?
Through the chair, I would say it's similar. A lot of it depends on where the master plan lands from James Corner Field operations, which right. I think what last we saw was a 30% drawing. So as that plan gets more refined, we'll be better able to estimate the costs of implementing the plan, which includes the public infrastructure. So we're getting there. It's just not yet ready at the moment.
And similarly with the North Coast Connector, we now have a sense of the shape of it, but we're continuing to evaluate what the shoreway will look like, and that's a piece of that infrastructure work, right?
Sure. And I promise I'll get on brand and start calling it the North Coast Connector. Do we have, through the chair, an order of magnitude in terms of what a TIF district could generate at this point in time, just understanding? I'm trying to kind of build the big picture for myself, and maybe beneficial to others as well.
Yeah, through the chair, not at this point. We're still assessing the potential boundaries that we would want to recommend to council in future legislation, and then still need to do some digging in the numbers supporting those districts to really vet them and come up with really good, more informed assessments of what those could produce on a year-by-year cash flow basis versus what could be leveraged up front with debt to provide a significant amount of upfront cash, and getting a better idea of how to balance that. I don't think we'd want to suck it all out in a debt offering right away. But we gotta take more time to do that assessment to figure out what is the most efficient and effective way to use the TIF proceeds over the course of the lifespan of the TIF.
So I think, Mr. Chair, this is a really important discussion today. It goes without saying that there are a lot of unknowns, and we'll be coming back to the table with this. I think I want to mention that I want to stay on advocacy, this federal state advocacy piece for a few minutes, because obviously, I mean, we don't have exact numbers, but the order of magnitude is enormous. It could be $1 billion in public infrastructure investment. More, we don't know, but it will be these eye-popping numbers, right? And I want to mention that in terms of our lakefront, something that's not part of today's discussion because it's not part of a TIF district, I think one of the most important lakefront investments is going to be the Cheers plan, right, to get the east side reconnected to the lake. So we have the potential of this community making major strategic asks of government partners for significant infrastructure needs ranging from Cheers to Lakefront to North Coast Connector to Riverfront. And I would just say that I would hope that, especially as this conversation evolves and we come back for further discussion, so this will be a statement and then perhaps a question, that we have very, very earnest discussions about strategy. Maybe not all of it can be disclosed at the table, but I would hope for some deep, deep guidance from people who know how to navigate these, Congress, both chambers, as our chair pointed out, who know how to navigate the State House. What is realistic for Cleveland ask? I mean, what we've kind of been saying to the public is we can have it all. And I'm saying now, I hope we can have it all, but can we please just make sure that if it comes to a place where we have to prioritize, are we going to be prepared to do that? And how do we prioritize those asks? I don't have the answer to that question. I wish I knew how, an effective lobbying strategy worked for this, because I think these are all incredibly valuable, important investments. But I think a level of just an earnest discussion about what we think that'll actually look like and how will Cleveland, if needed, prioritize, I think will be really important, because I think, the North Coast Connector process has certainly gone public. It has a very public phase to it. People might be getting excited about what's been presented publicly. This, I think some people are aware of, and it will begin to gain more and more capture more and more public imagination. I mentioned Cheers. So I think that I'm very curious about the overall, certainly I think we all have a great relationship with, we are fortunate to have such phenomenal public servants serving Northeast Ohio in Congress, U.S. Senate, the State House. We can ask them for their guidance, but I think that's a really important part of the discussion is how do we have it all? Can we have it all? So I want to put a pin in that in today's conversation with this coming up. So I don't know if there are reactions to that through the chair.
To the councilwoman through the chair, I'll say a couple things. One, I think we're at a point where we're really trying to drive alignment between all the public partners on the funding priorities. There's a regular meeting with leadership from the city, the county, NOACA, GCP, Metro Parks, the port, others to kind of make sure that we are not stepping on one another on federal opportunities. I think the other piece, I think you raise a great question, and can we have it all? I think that the mayor, I think, has been clear in his interactions with our officials that, we are a two-waterfront city, and these projects are connected and aligned. We're looking at the shore to shore strategy. It's consistent with the waterfront fund out of ARPA that we brought here earlier this year, the consistent theme here is how do we leverage our waterfront for equitable community access? And that, I think that covers Cheers, it covers the downtown lakefront, it covers the riverfront. But I think that is the kind of consistent point in terms of this theme of how we can strengthen our neighborhoods and drive more economic growth and leverage our water that we've been trying to kind of bundle together consistently. And obviously we do want to leverage this moment to bring the most that we can for all those projects.
I appreciate your comment through the chair about I'm Godspeed with that, aligning all those partners, these moving parts and projects, but just not stepping on each other with federal opportunities, because I think it will become clear, even if we don't have the numbers today, that serious investment from government will be needed, in addition to anything that's generated through the public-private partnership or the district. There's a lot of work to do, good work. So look forward to learning more, and thank you all for your hard work. So I wanted to then just pivot to a few things about the second half of the presentation, through the chair potentially, just to the other side of the table. Councilman Casey had to step away, but he and I were having a little bit of a chat here on this side about, we just had earlier this morning, the Hawthorne School redevelopment presentation talked about $1.40 per square foot rents, who that serves. And Ms. Janik in her presentation talked about the potential 2,000 units of housing. It could be workforce, there's workforce, affordable market rate. 2,000 units of housing is a lot. There have been a lot of debates back and forth about how much housing is needed for what income band. Certainly look forward to more discussion about that. I will just offer my own opinion, not shared with anyone, none of my colleagues. I'm not assuming anyone shares my opinion, but I know that the North Coast Connector project also envisions some housing. I would also say on the housing side, we have to be highly coordinated and strategic. I will put this out as my opinion only, we may not be able to have it all. I think that in terms of having the market to support these rental type units, unless there are other types of units, it would be my opinion that it's more organic for the riverfront, which is integrated with downtown and the street grid and everything else, to become a neighborhood more naturally than sort of out on the lake might. It's really hard to build. I also say this, I'm a little biased because I live on a North Coast neighborhood, and I've been down to the lakefront in winter and experienced the winds and other conditions. So I think that's another example of, really being open, honest, transparent, strategic about looking at all these projects as a whole and not as not siloing them, because I think when we're talking about things like units of housing and so on, and how many do we need for what income, I think it's all of, especially since we're talking about a TIF district that's core shore, I think it is also productive to think about housing as a bigger picture. And not consider them in silos. So that was a long run-on thought. I don't know if there's any reaction to that, but wanting to put that out today.
Yeah, to the councilwoman through the chair, just some quick reactions. One, I think we're looking very much at the economic reality of today and trying to project what the economic reality of the future is. And certainly, these are the type of generational public infrastructure investments that we hope and believe will turn the trajectory of the city more towards growth. And we want to make sure we're positioned for that. It's not just these investments in isolation. The Site Readiness for Good Jobs Fund to really bring more and reshore jobs into our community. We're trying to make bets right now to make the investments to enable a stronger future in terms of growth, and balancing out that planning even in the lakefront piece. The JCFO had HRNA as an economic analysis piece of that to look at kind of housing projections, market absorption over the last 10 years, and trying to both be realistic about what the market could absorb, not set ourselves up so that if things are hugely successful, we can't add the growth and accommodate the growth that we want to. So I think we're trying to straddle those things, but I do think we have an expectation with all the policy and investments that we're making here that this is going to change what the future looks like, and we're not going to continue to be on the flat line we've been on.
And through the chair, just to clarify, we're talking about population growth, positioning the city for
Population growth,
population
economic growth, absolutely.
And then through the chair, to the chief, what was the name of the study that you referenced, the market absorption study?
Downtown Cleveland Alliance did a housing demand study earlier this year, last year.
They did, oh, okay, I'll have to refresh. Okay, and then I think I just have one final question about there were great questions already asked about a lot of what Bedrock is working on. Just curious if we can go to one of the slides related to Bedrock's, the riverfront, sorry. The waterfront. A few more there. Maybe a couple more. There was an aerial. Yeah, one of those, that one. It says open space 9 acres, and then I thought I caught earlier in the presentation something about 5 acres. So I wanted to clarify public open space versus open space versus what is, this equity theme that obviously is so important to all of us in envisioning this work. Through the chair.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, to the councilwoman. What you'll see on this slide and the next two is really an initial phasing aspects of the project as anticipated to start as early as we hope next month with some work starting on the bulkhead improvements. And over the course of the next 60 to 84 months, Bedrock anticipates investments in collaboration with the city, as we're talking about today, around a public-private financing arrangement, again, coming back to this body through the administration for more discussion. But our anticipation is, over the next 7 years, that we will be able to, with our partners, invest on the riverfront to deliver the 5 acres of highlighted public and open space. And with that, then, set the foundation for deliverable sites to begin the vertical development, sequential vertical developments of the project. As we move forward in this slide, and perhaps the next slide, we'll reference back to what I discussed earlier with Councilman Harsh's question of a relocation of Canal Road, the Eagle Bridge connector, bulkhead improvements for the river, and a river walk, as you can see, especially on the western end, some of the meandering of the river walk into the public park space. As the CFO referenced, as we move forward with our work, Bedrock will continue in our master development agreement, through our public financing agreements, community benefit agreements, and agreements that will include other public partners, potentially, like a Port of Cleveland, a Metro Parks, a Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. We are prepared to deliver the public space and public infrastructure with the connections discussed through Tower City Center, the steps on both ends of Huron Road down to the riverfront. Public access for all. And certainly as that refers to public improvements, public infrastructure that may be city-owned, most certainly, but in the public park aspects, working through agreements to make clear that provide public access for every resident, every Clevelander, every visitor, every tourist, every employee to that waterfront. That is our commitment. The foundation of the development starts with those public improvements and delivering the assets therein to this community, because it will ultimately accelerate, we believe, economic growth, as the chief referenced, as well as market absorption, which you so appropriately identified through investments such as continued housing at all levels. So it starts with that public accessibility.
Great. So I think I understand now, essentially 5 acres within 5 to 7 years, anticipating 9 acres, roughly 10 years.
And then on the next slide.
And then 12.
A total
Okay.
of 12.
12. And so then this is my last question, Mr. Chair, would be, when we say open space, are those 12 acres, that is fully public accessible open space, or what is open space defined as?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilwoman, there will be a definition in agreements. but from Bedrock's perspective, it is publicly accessible open space, including access to the transit hub, as is provided today by Bedrock through Tower City, 24/7.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the great line of questioning, Councilwoman Spencer. Council President Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we glad to have these guests here today. We know that the waterfront, access to our waterfront has been critically important, so looking forward to this extended conversation. A couple of things that I do just want to make sure that I ask is the bulkheads. You're looking at putting in approximately 3,000 feet of bulkhead. Is that needed to stabilize the riverfront, and who's going to be doing that work? Is that the Army Corps of Engineers, or why is that amount needed, and who's going to be doing that work?
Mr. Chairman, to the Council President, good morning. Yes, the 3,000 lineal feet of bulkhead is the current length of the bulkhead that wraps the Bedrock properties as defined in the project area. We are continuing our analysis with our consultants as to what components of the bulkhead are in good shape, what needs to be rehabilitated, what needs to be replaced. In doing so, stabilization of the bulkhead will allow us to bring in the necessary fill and improvements that will stabilize the site and allow for the deliverable pads to be advanced for the ultimate vertical development. In addition, our intention in repairing and replacing and rehabilitating the bulkhead along the 3,000 lineal feet is to allow for that improved access that we were just discussing, making sure it's tied to and part of a congruent plan for connection into existing trails, including the towpath trail, but also along the waterfront parks and open public space.
Okay.
So we want to make sure we stabilize it, and it will, in alignment with the Corps' national permit, it starts by protecting the federal navigation channel to ensure that our freighters and shipping industry can continue to work seamlessly upriver to our core industry and manufacturing base.
Right, because if you're looking at building up that area, there's significant amount of buffering that you're going to have to do in order to strengthen that area so that it doesn't slide into the river pretty much, right?
Mr. Chairman, to the Council President, that's
Okay.
correct.
All right, especially if you're looking at going vertical. So there's going to be a lot of shoring that's going to be needed in that area. What amount of federal funding is going to be requested? I know that I've heard different numbers, but what percentage, if not a hard number, what percentage of this because it's going to be about $3.5 billion over 20 years. What percentage do we anticipate we're going to go after for the federal government? Because I believe this project to do the infrastructure is going to be about 7 years or so. What percentage are we looking at getting funding from the federal government? Are we dependent on the federal government for?
So through the chair to the council president, we don't have a set percentage in mind. We've cataloged all the available federal sources, grants, loans, et cetera, that we are working to, that we will be pursuing with the agencies and with Congress to augment whatever public funding we can bring at the local level. We're also going to be working with the state, similarly with their existing set of grant and loan programs and other potential appropriations that could come down the line. So without a specific percentage in mind, our objective is to bring as much state and federal money as we possibly can to support the shore to core to shore work that we are focusing on with this TIF district idea, and of which the Bedrock Riverfront project is a key component.
Okay. And a third of this space will be public, or how much, what percentage of the space will be public once this project is completed?
Mr. Chairman, to the Council President, the current project area, as depicted on the screen, is approximately 35 acres. And as we look towards the public space, public improvement development, 12 acres, so roughly 30%.
Okay. And then once we do all of these improvements, the net present value will increase and improve once we do these infrastructure improvements? And do we understand or have an estimate of how much the net present value will improve, or do we know?
Through the chair to the council president, yes. So to the first part, yes, the expectation with these investments in public infrastructure that the property values throughout downtown, but most specifically the properties that are benefited directly by these improvements will increase in value for sure. What the dollar amount of that increase in value will be is what was one of the things we will be working to assess over the next couple of months in anticipation of bringing legislation to council to establish the TIF district structure that we've discussed.
That's the reason I was asking, because if that net present value goes up, then that changes the amounts of the TIF and everything else, right?
Through the chair, that's right.
Okay. All right. Just the only other thing that I really have is, and I know I asked you this just for the public and just for our colleagues to be clear, this doesn't hinder our GO capacity by spending too much on these lakefront or riverfront projects. It won't tie up, our GO's bonds, so then we can't do other projects in the neighborhood.
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. And I would actually offer that with, assuming we get the TIF district structure in place, it will actually allow us to pay for certain improvements with this TIF revenue that we would otherwise have to pay for with debt.
Okay. All right. That's all I had, Mr. Chair. Once again, I think that this is very important for us to really have access to our waterfront. I know that that's one of the biggest priorities in this city, is to have access to the lakefront and the riverfront. It's one of the things that all of council should become very well briefed in, because we know that that's a priority for the region and the city, and it's something that I hope that we continue to plow away at. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the committee for your questions. Any further questions to the group? Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Deb. Absolutely, thank you for being here and going through the presentation with us. As you see, a lot of questions. There's still more to come. And, to make sure that we continue to move this along, at a good rate. Please make sure that leadership, Councilman McCormick, myself, is briefed on those CBA conversations, so that way, we really would like to have, kind of an understanding or direction of, what we're working towards regarding those aspects as we continue to move parts of this along. That's very, very important. I'm sure that, as I said earlier, I made it clear, Councilman McCormick's made it clear, council leadership has made it clear on what we want to see as it relates to community benefits and minority participation, partnerships on this project as we move forward. And because I believe that the Community Investment Fund will be wrapped into the CBA as well, correct?
Through the chair, for the portion of the TIF revenue
Correct.
that could go, I think it could be built into the CBA. It could exist separately. I think that'll be part of what we as a group work on.
Okay. I personally would like it to be separate, not to be a part of the CBA, but make that separate, in which will require council involvement in that. And as we go along, we can figure that out, what that looks like along the way. All right. Okay, seeing no further questions, ordinance number 787-2023 stands approved. All right. Thank you all.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Can we please excuse Madam Clerk, Councilwoman House? Thank you. DPS stands approved.
Thanks, everyone.